I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Public Works Committee, City of Hudson. We are meeting on Monday evening, September 11th, 2023. First item is I'm going to call the roll. First up, Councilmember Mike Kennedy from District 4.
Here.
Present. And Councilmember Sarah Brook from District 5.
Here.
Also present, so all of our council is present, and we have our quorum. Also like to introduce several staff members. To my left is our city engineer, Aaron McPhee Anderson. To my right is Deb Andrews, who is a long-standing employee of the Public Works Department and is executive assistant. Couldn't do it without you, Deb. And also Public Works Director, of course, Mike Moraz to my right. So let's begin. First item is to discussion and possible approval of the minutes from last meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Okay, we also offer this time for comments or suggestions from any citizens, but seeing that no one is present with us this evening, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is new business. And this item, I believe, Aaron McPhee Anderson is going to take a discussion and possible action on existing retaining wall resurfacing 101 3rd Street.
So this item, we have an existing retaining wall. It's up the 3rd Street Hill, so it is kind of along the project that we are doing. Nothing in the plans were put in place to repair the wall. Just being up there quite a bit with the construction project. You know, nothing has happened with the construction project, but just noticing a lot of deterioration on the bottom of the wall. And then also just in general on the face of the wall, just from over time. I don't know how old it is, but it's probably a pretty old wall. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to a concrete company to see what kind of work they could do to repair it and just kind of restore it to make it last longer so the deterioration doesn't actually become like a structural issue. So I don't feel like there's any structural issues. It's more of a preventative maintenance kind of thing. And so they gave a few options with concrete. One of them was just to repair the delamination at the base of the wall. So there's very big holes, as you can see in the attached pictures, at the base of the wall. Some of them are like 6 inches deep, and the wall is about 14 inches wide, so fairly significant. The second option includes that option, but also just to prep and resurface the entire roadside face. And so that would be for $27,000, and that would just help. You know, I included a picture of what it looked like on the street facing side and what the non-street facing side, and you can see it, assuming that, you know, both sides originally looked the same. You can see that there's still quite a bit of deterioration along the full face of it, most likely from salt and more snow buildup along the actual face of that side of the wall. So I'm recommending that we just go ahead with the full resurfacing and repairing of the entire wall because we do have funds available, and I am recommending using some of the CIP rollover funds from previous years. So we would still have some extra rollover funds, but we would have enough to cover it with that.
And did you say, I know it was in the email, but what was the total cost on that then?
Well, yeah, so $27,000.
Okay, 27, okay.
Got quoted. $11,000 would be just to repair like essentially the holes on the bottom of the wall, which I would want to do at a minimum.
And you have an address here?
Yes.
So any of that wall originally put in by the homeowner, or I guess my point is,
Yep.
any of that will be assessed to the homeowner at that address?
I don't think so. I guess I haven't looked at a retaining wall policy for like repair costs. I don't know if you would know off the top of your head, Mike. I can try to bring it up. I was assuming no. You know, it is kind of an interesting situation because it's not necessarily holding back. You know, it's above the street level, so it's kind of acting as a barrier wall. You know, I think now they wouldn't maybe design it that high, but it seems like a pretty old wall, so I don't.
Right.
It seems like it is more holding up the road, so I do know that a retaining wall policy kind of delineated the ownership as like, what is the retaining wall holding up? And so
Okay.
since it is holding up the road, I kind of feel, even though it's extending maybe higher than it would need to hold up the road, I feel like it would probably fall on us because of that.
I think it's in our
specifically.
right of way. I
Yeah,
remember.
it's definitely within our right of way.
I remember that discussion last year when we talked about the possibility of having kind of a cantilevered bike path up there, and that we really, we don't have much room there, but yet
Right.
that wall is ours.
Yes.
I believe. So it's a good question. It's very valid.
Yeah.
Though it would be hard to bring back to the homeowners at this point.
Right.
It's an additional, but it's good to thoroughly discuss that
Mm-hmm.
option where, we have a lot of retaining walls in the city, and some residents do have to pay for them. It's true, or part of the repair.
So in the retaining wall policy, any maintenance of existing retaining walls, this would fall under, is 100% to the owner of the wall, which in this case is the city because it lies within the right of way. And it, we were the ones that installed it years and years and years ago. So we would bear this cost.
It's historic Hudson, that's for sure.
Right.
Yes.
Well, one question I would like to delve into a little bit is about the rollover funds. It's something I'm not really familiar with. What year did it roll over from? I know we try to only bond for as much as we're going to spend on a given year, so we're not paying interest on borrowed money. But there are times, I guess it's always a happy day when a project comes in under budget, and so we have some left. Was this, the two of you may not have that answer for me here today. Is there a limit on when those have to be spent? One of my questions, just jump to the next part of it, is when we talked about redirecting, we had potential CIP money designated for down by the Gagnon Reuter Welton project.
The commercial?
Commercial, there you go. I was
Okay.
going to say industrial, but it's commercial street. So you're made a wise decision that that project may or may not be going in the next 12 months, so let's use that funding out on Vine Street.
Yes.
Yet if I'm not mistaken, that funding proposal that we've got is, we don't have enough money completely for that project yet. Is that true?
It's going to be,
Kinda close
what's
on
going to
it?
happen is the engineering department will have to design within our budget.
For Vine Street?
For Vine
Sorry, I
Street,
missed
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so I was just thinking, is that a place where that rollover money could also be used?
Yep. So like rollover money is basically, like Joy insinuated, is whenever a project comes in under budget, right? So let's just say for a project, $2 million project, we end up coming in under budget and it's 1.8 million, where that $200,000 is still bonded for. The city is still, taking that money in. So typically what happens is we look to roll that over to future maintenance projects. And we primarily, when it's anything for like streets, alleys, we like to keep it, in
the
that
same
pool,
use.
in that pool of money, so that we can either help cover the cost of overruns in a future year's project, or add on additional things that come up, or help do a larger project in the following years. So that's typically how it's been done in the past. As far as limitations on how long we have to spend that money, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to ask Allison, the finance director. But it's usually where, like, if we're bonded, I like to spend the money in the next bond cycle. So if these are 2021, 22, and 22 bond monies, I like to spend it in 2023, 2024 bond cycle, if that makes any sense. It's not like we're pulling money from 2015, 2016 by any means.
Sure, so it's recent
Yes,
bonding.
very
and-
recent.
And we, like you said, it's designated to street maintenance.
Yep.
It wouldn't be moved into a park project, like let's say the Williams Park.
Correct.
Accommodation that's being built needs more money. We wouldn't shoot it over there, we keep it in
Correct.
this designated fund. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. I just didn't recall coming across that before, and so I wanted to get a little more information. I appreciate that.
Just a quick question. How much do we have in our rollover funds?
Well, I put it, so it's the 186,000, with two of them. So one of the accounts, they're from two separate, one of them was like a crack ceiling and one of them was another random roadway project. So I don't know if there's other infrastructure funds that we also have rollover. These were the two that I knew about that Allison had told me, so it must be the only two. So about 180, but we did use basically part of the funds for the change order for this project as well.
Okay.
So our change
Right.
order, yeah, so we don't have the full 180,000 left. So, but essentially we'll still have like 50,000 left in rollover funds if we approve
Yeah,
the
this is
27,000.
Kind of tough project, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very unique. Welcome to Hudson.
Yes, yeah.
Taking on this engineering, which I know you
Yes,
weren't involved
they're-
in the original bidding and engineer work, and
Yes.
had to really respond as things are revealed, and if we have the money for it. It's certainly
Yeah.
an important factor, so.
So I move to proceed as you've recommended with the $27,000 project
Okay.
for the Third Street retaining wall.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the bid from Pembroke Companies for $27,000 to prep and resurface the entire wall on the roadside of the Third Street Hill project, and that those funds are coming from the designated rollover accounts, as indicated on our issue sheet. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, very good. That is passed, and we can move forward with that. Thank you, Allison. Aaron, excuse me.
No, that's okay.
I called you the wrong name last time.
It's okay.
Okay, Joy, thank you. Excuse me. All right, the next item, 5B, discussion possible action on the 2024 alley reconstruction project.
Okay, so yes, this one, so we, we have our alley project for next year. It's kind of, sounds like it's a every other year cycle since we designate 50,000 each year. So we choose to kind of consolidate that and do 100,000 every 2 years or every other year. So some of the alleys that we're gonna suggest to do next year, we've done a little bit of preliminary engineering and looked at the cost to see what would fit within the $100,000. They are two alleyways that are in very rough condition, so they do need more than just kind of a take the existing pavement on and put new pavement. It really needs some sub-base correction. One of the alleys, which I'm calling alley number 2, we have had adjacent residents come and talk. I think it was the Public Works Committee, about how bad it was, how it's kind of sloughing off to one side. So it has a pretty big cross slope to it. And I think we've figured out a way that we could get away with fixing it without a small retaining wall. So it's going to be considered a reconstruction. And then the other alley is nearby in the same vicinity, also has a lot of rutting and in very poor condition. So we looked at that as well. Ironically, they do have the same cost approximately. And as you can see, so both alleys would be about $65,000. And that is over the $100,000. But based on our special assessment alley policy, since it would be a full reconstruction, that the cost would be split 50% with the city and then 50% with the adjacent property owners of the alley. So that makes it, we are able to do it then with our $100,000 allocated funds. So alley 1 would have about $15,000 in assessments, and alley 2 would have $24,000 in assessments. So a little different assessments based on the actual work to be done in each alleyway for the assessable costs. So we just recommend going with both these alleys. I would roll them into the overall project next year. So I would plan to do Vine Street, Green Street, and the alleys like in one bid package essentially. So hopefully, some of the prices that we use for this cost estimate were a little bit inflated, assuming it was just gonna be a smaller project. Hopefully we would kind of get better, be able to take advantage of the larger overall quantities and have, maybe a lower cost when it's all said and done. But this was trying to be a little bit conservative, so that's where we're at with that.
Thanks for some explanation on how you got to those two alleys. I'm going to ask that we just, if, as we move on these, if we could break them apart, specifically because I live on Alley 1, so I would like to not be part of that discussion at all or part of the voting, so I'd like to recuse myself from that one. But now I have a better understanding of how you chose that one, because this was the first time I knew that when I read the agenda, so. So that's just one of my favors to see if we can do that, if we can break those two apart.
Yeah.
Sure, I mean, I think, do you feel not comfortable discussing it either, or?
I would feel more comfortable not being part of the discussion at all on that
Okay.
one.
Well, how about if we, sure, I mean, I don't know what the best way to approach that. I mean, I certainly want your input since you live in the district where all the alleys are. So Alley 1 is the one that you said is adjacent to your property, okay.
And the reason why we did select that alley is just because of the proximity of the two, right? When we're redoing alleys, we typically try to keep them as close to each other as possible, just to keep down on the mobilization costs. And it's just easier for the contractor to get in and out and do them
Yep.
quickly when they're next to each other.
Sure.
It's not like we want to do one on the far south side and then one on the far north side of town. It's just hard for the contractor to split up equipment and crews and so on and so forth. And like I said, mobilization costs go up. So that's the reason why, between Aaron and myself, we selected these two.
Sure.
Because of alley number 2, obviously, we had some public input, like, okay, let's look at that, right? What's another nearby alley that's in very, very poor condition? And it just so happens that it's on, District Representative Brooks', backyard, but that's nothing that
Right,
she
you
was a
had-
part of or anything like that.
You had
so.
stated that earlier,
Yeah.
that you were trying to group them, and
Yeah.
certainly by vicinity and by year. Also, we have, well, how about if we do this? Let's talk about alley number 2 first, and that way Councilmember Brooke can participate and vote if she is comfortable doing so. And then, we can vote for them separately.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
It's fine with me.
Thank
So
you.
anyway, let's go forward. First of all, I would like to ask Mike if you could clarify for us, Aaron alluded to it a little bit, but I know that since you've come here on our Hudson staff, that you helped work on, you recognize certainly the need, our older infrastructure in the older part of town, including the alleys, really needed some work, and as a way to make it more property owner friendly, the policy was actually amended
Great.
so that the city bore more of the cost
Correct.
of the alleys. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
Could you
So,
describe that
yeah,
and the
so
process that you
basically-
did?
When I first got here, there was a lot of opposition to redoing the alleys just because of the assessment policy, the way it was written, right? And so the condition of the alleys kind of got in the way that they are now just because there was a lot of that pushback. Well, when I first got here, I kind of recognized that. It's like, okay, well, if it's just a simple tear out the old blacktop, recompact the base, lay a new, let's just get in here and get these things done and not assess the property owner. But if it's anything beyond that, more of a reconstruction where you're digging up the sub-base, installing new utility lines, concrete flumes or, surmountable curbs, that would be considered a full reconstruct or a reconstruct alley, which would then kind of trigger that assessment policy. And that's the reason why Aaron had stated that this would qualify for that assessment.
So would you say the word is just resurface
Yeah.
versus reconstruction?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And I know I've asked you this before, so I hate to put you on the spot here because I didn't tell you I was going to ask you today, but how many of our existing alleys, I know you have Pacers ratings on those, how many of them right now need reconstruction versus resurfacing, do you know?
That is a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. If I were to guess, I would say over half would probably need some type of reconstruction work, yeah.
Yes.
Just because, when these alleys were first put in, they weren't based correctly, and so to stand up to the weight of, not just vehicles, but the garbage truck that utilizes the alleys, that's what the primary driver is, they get beat up over time with the heavy truck traffic. So we just want to make sure that they're based correctly, that they do last a long time, and unfortunately, a lot of them don't have that correct sub-base.
Sure.
Yeah. Or they don't have the correct stormwater utility to capture the water and get it out. It's just kind of standing on there, and then what happens, freeze thaw cycle that hurts the asphalt as well. So incorporating some of those utilities into the work as well, it would.
So if particular alley that was identified, it just need resurfacing, the homeowner or the property owner would not be assessed for it?
Right. Basically, we're coming in, we're just ripping. It's just such what do you want to say? It's a lot lower cost type of work.
Sure.
Right. And it's just a way to kind of get ahead of it. And that's the way that I've been doing it the last few years. It's not to say that it's right or wrong, but
Sure.
we're just trying to get a jump start on, just because when I first got here, I know a lot of people were calling about their alleys.
Sure. Okay, well, thanks for explaining that. And like you said, you did choose some that need major work, obviously, and so the homeowners, I'm sure will be glad to hear that their alley's on the list, top of the list, but yet there is an assessment coming to their property tax. So anyway, I'll step back and let the other two members speak. Sorry to take the time.
No,
There we go.
good questions. I have a question that kind of is both of them. Well, let's just say it's more alley too. No, but in general, help me understand as I look at the map, I know it's not to scale. Well, I guess it is to scale, but they look like the same amount of alleyway, and they've been priced out each at 65. So help me understand the difference between the assessments. Is it by square footage, or excuse me, linear footage of ownership? 'Cause
It's
someone owns
about, in
both
this
sides of it.
case, so it is unique, so one of the alleys actually needs like the apron that's adjacent to the street and like the sidewalk into the alley redone, because the concrete's in really bad condition, and the curb and gutter in front of the actual alley adjacent to the road. That's within our right-of-way, so
Okay.
that cost is more on us. The other alleys' entrances were actually fine, but they need more, like some curb and gutter and more base material in the actual alley, which is accessible to the property owners. So there's like more alley work versus on the one that has the higher
Okay.
assessment. And so alley number one had more work within the public right-of-way, which was like the concrete aprons into them. So
Okay.
that's kind of, I know, it kind of looks funny, so it's a very good question, but it's just the different type of repairs that each one needs is different, and the work that's accessible to the property owners versus what's in the public right-of-way is the difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Good. Thanks for explaining
Yeah.
that. That clears it up, so.
So a couple of questions with respect to assessments. When do property owners hear about that? And I wanted to also make sure I understood the 50-50. So 50% is the city, and really it's 25% on each side of the alley. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
I would look at it, I mean, I don't know how we have done alleys in the past. There are two, I was reading our assessment policy, and it wasn't exactly saying this is how you assess alleys, as far as if you go off linear footage of property, or if you just go by number of properties on that side. And I would say, I would go off the number of properties based on the benefit. Like if someone has a longer property line adjacent to the alley, I mean, they're kind of getting the same benefit than their adjacent one, because they're both using it for their driveway, to access their driveway. So yes, I would take 25% essentially would go to, well, we could look at it, yes, 25% to each side, and then you split it up by the number of properties on that side. Or I guess in general, we could just take 50% and divide it among both sides. I don't know actually if that would come out different, but it could, actually.
And if this was being done next summer, so that's 2024.
Yep.
So the year they would actually be assessed is,
I think it goes, I still am trying to get an understanding on how it actually gets applied. I did recently ask Allison, but I think it kind of depends on when the final assessment is taken and given to our finance department.
okay.
So it's within the next year, I think it is.
It's probably going to be in the 2025 taxes.
Yeah, or would it be the next?
October 25th of the year?
Well, then
on the
it also
next year's
depends on how much
taxes.
the assessment is, what it's calculated. Because
Sure.
if it falls in a certain dollar amount, you have to either, pay it all at once, or you can pay it over time, over a 3-year, 5-year period as well. So that's also,
Okay.
And so a
out there
lot
as
of
well.
people will pay the preliminary assessment prior to, and then if there's any credit or anything
They'll get it.
fluctuation, then
Okay.
they're notified.
Yeah, so I did ask for some information recently from Allison. So looking, she said, final assessment notices will be sent to the property owners upon substantial completion of the project. So that's usually in the fall. But it probably would end up being the beginning of the next year once we got it all figured out. It will include the assessment amount, and then when the notice is mailed, the owner has the option to pay the assessment without interest within 45 days. Payments can be mailed or brought to City Hall, and then if the owner does not pay within 45 days, the amount will be added to the property tax bill, according to the following payment schedule, so.
Yeah, so for payment duration, if it's $500 or less, 1 year to pay it. If it's 500 to 1,000, it's 2 years. 1,000 to 2,500, it's 3 years. And I don't think we would have anything above that for this project. But it kind of gives you an idea of how long they would have to pay for that.
Yep, 5,000 or greater, 10 years to pay it.
And just like any sidewalk.
With interest, though.
Curb and
so.
gutter, people get notified by letters, have a
Yes.
chance to come and
Yep, public
Yep.
speak
hearing.
at public
Yep,
hearing, things like that.
Yeah.
Would take place next spring, or when would that?
We would probably do it, let's see, if this goes ahead, probably, yeah, sometime over the winter months.
Winter months, so we
Yeah.
can be
Yeah,
ready?
if we like to use, then we can have the actual as-bid costs, if like if we bid the project in February, March.
I like using as-bids because then it's more.
It'll be
it's
more accurate, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So then we could, again, the homeowners, property owners would know what was coming
Yes.
more specifically, because you'd know what the price. Okay, thank you. And is there any issue, like you had mentioned, Mike, about when these were originally constructed, you know, they didn't design to carry the size vehicles we have or the garbage trucks. Is there any concern about the width of our alleys in Hudson for emergency vehicles to go through? Is there, I mean, it makes a single lane, it's enough
Yeah,
for,
you know, most of our alleys are 12 to 14 feet wide,
Okay.
which on a normal, you know, thoroughfare road, you have a 12-foot travel lane.
Okay.
The only concern that I have over time is just the vegetation growth on the sides of the alleys that we have to take care of and manage.
Okay.
And our crews will typically go through the alleyways prior to winter and trim them up.
Oh, I
just so
see.
that the plow trucks aren't getting hit and scraped and so on and so forth, by all
Okay.
the brush next to it. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion on alley 2, or do you have, would you like to make a motion to go forward with that?
And this,
Yeah, do you want to do it two or?
Oh, excuse me, which one? We're gonna,
Yep,
we're
it's-
doing,
Yeah,
two.
I'll make a motion. to
we're doing
approve.
alley 2.
Two, yep.
Yeah, please,
Okay.
alley 2's on the,
I'll make a motion for alley 2, 2024 reconstruction project.
and I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second that we proceed with the reconstruction project as outlined on our issue sheet for alley 2, which runs between 5th and 6th Street, Locust and Vine. And that would, with the appropriate, or the estimated costs and the estimated alley assessments as indicated on our issue sheet. Again, we're talking about alley 2. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are going to move ahead with alley 2. Okay, let's pick up with alley number 1 then. And this one is, it runs north and south, 5th to 6th Street as well.
Fourth to
Excuse me, 4th, I'm reading the wrong one. Yeah,
Yeah.
4th to 5th Street, there we go, sorry, I'm on the wrong line. This one, as we discussed, is being the same dollar amount, yet the assessment is different. Do you have any comments on it?
No, similar to the second one. I mean, it's, you guys have done your research and, you know, we could be here for weeks figuring out if this one other alley might have more potholes than the other, but because of your research on it and understanding that to try to save a few bucks, maybe put them close together for the reconstruction, that makes good sense. So, yeah, so I move to approve alley 1 reconstruction.
I second that motion. So, and Councilmember Brooke is recused from this, if you'd make note in the minutes, please. So our motion is to move forward with the reconstruction plan for what has been identified as Alley 1 and the appropriate assessment on our issue sheet to the adjacent property owners. We have a motion by Kennedy, second by Knudsen. Brooke is recused. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that one is also carried. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is under new business, 5C, discuss 2024 Public Works operating budget. That'll be to Mike Moraz.
Yeah, I'll take this one over. So obviously, the Finance Committee has been discussing this the last couple meetings, and I just wanted to bring this forward from the Public Works Committee so that you have an opportunity to ask questions. I'll summarize kind of what was put together, and then we'll go from there. We'll look at the Public Works operating budget, and then we'll have a chance to look at the storm sewer operating budget as well. So just off the top, the overall increase from 2023 to 2024 is 8.9%. And on the last page was, an additional $189,329. I did take out the staff adjustments from there just to kind of give you an idea of what is actually the operating costs that are being increased. And so that, if you're taking out the staff costs from 2023 to 2024, the budget has increased 7.9%, or an additional $53,700. So what we'll do is we'll kind of just start from the top. Now, obviously, in your issue sheet, the items in green were supposed to be, I see the first one is incorrect, but the items in green were supposed to be the ones that I had reduced from the 2023 budget. And then the items in reds are those line items that I had to increase. And the majority of the increases were due to, obviously, inflationary costs, just keeping up with the cost of electric utilities, gas utilities, water, sanitary, so on and so forth. There are a couple of larger increases that you'll see, and I'll specifically point them out to you and kind of give you the reason why those were increased. As you're looking at your spreadsheet, obviously, the first column is the proposed, so that's the 2024 proposed. The next column is the 2023 budget, so that's the actual budget that I have this year. And then the 2023 actual, that is about 2 weeks shy of going through the full 3 quarters, the first 3 quarters of the year. So it kind of gives you a ballpark idea. Typically we want to be around that 70 to 80% of the budget spent at this time, So as you're looking at it, and just not tonight, but in the weeks to come, because I know this is really interesting, it kind of gives the idea of where we're at and where we're falling. And you'll see, obviously, with the storms that we've had, we're over budget in many items, especially in Shade Tree. So going through, obviously, City Hall, not really major adjustments to the City Hall budget. Does anybody have any questions before I kind of dive into this? Does that all make sense to everybody? Okay. Yep. As you're looking at kind of the next page, curb and gutter, not very many adjustments. I reduced it by $1,000. A lot of our concrete work is in the storm sewer system, so we're utilizing the 640 account for that. The east garage, obviously some increase to the water and sewer, up $500. Reduce the service repair, office supplies, building services, small tools, just based on historical trends. When I put this budget together, I was looking at not only the 2023 actuals, but I looked at the 2022 and 2021 actuals at the end of the year and compared them as well. Moving along, the emergency government sirens, fairly similar. One was increased $100 for electrical costs. One was reduced by $1,000 for service repair. As we're going along, not much change to Highway 94, 35. That's typically just our ice control chemicals that we get the money from the state from. Machinery and equipment, reduced the service repair line item, just basically to match historical spending to save some money overall. Same thing with, supply vehicles, supply others, going into mowing operations, not much has changed. Moving along, and please stop me if you have any questions or want any specifics. We're kind of getting to the big stuff. So, Public Works Administration, increased maintenance agreements and leases by $1,000. Like I said, just to keep up with historical trends for spending there. I did add back in some monies for travel and conference, as you know, things are opening up now, and just being able to go to a conference or two is always good to continue some education. As we go down to shade tree, that's kind of where we kind of start getting into some of the bigger numbers. So I had proposed $35,000 for the shade tree. So shade tree is both emerald ash borer and contractual services, just because of the increase that we're seeing out in the community now that emerald ash borer is kind of reaching that death curve. We're seeing a traumatic loss of our ash trees. So I had proposed $35,000 into that account, or that, department.
What line are you on there?
I'm sorry.
That's okay, I'm just trying to keep up with what line you're on.
You're right there.
Oh, got it, okay,
Yep,
thank
yep.
you.
So is that all removal, or is that also then replanting new trees in their place?
Just because, yep, so good question, Sarah. So historically, it has been both removal and planting. Because we are seeing just a drastic increase in the amount of trees that we're having to remove, the entire budget is going towards removals right now. And it will unless this budget is bumped dramatically. I mean, $35,000, that's, roughly about $1,000 a tree, so that's only 35 trees. We have about 500 to take out. So it kind of gives you an idea of where we're at.
Yeah.
So I don't have any money in this budget to replant anything, just because the removals are so vast right now. So I had proposed, so $35,000 is in the budget. Last year it was $30,000, so it's up $5,000 from last year.
Can I just ask, how does that impact our Tree City status? Does that negatively impact us then?
No.
Okay.
So the Tree City status, so obviously what happens, I apply every year at the end of the year, and I give them a breakdown of like our shade tree budget. This is the amount of money we spent on like removals, education, publications, plantings, staff time, equipment, so on and so forth. And they're very understanding of
About
the
emerald
problems
ash.
that a lot of the communities pretty much every community in Wisconsin is facing right now. And, there's different ways of doing it. Obviously, we've been very proactive up to this point. I know my predecessor, Tom Zuley, put together a program, and we've been removing ash trees for several years now. And we were at one point in time about 1,200 ash trees throughout the community. So we're almost halfway through our ash tree inventory right now. And with the storms, after we kind of get through, cleaning up the storm, I'm going to have my lead forestry person go out and kind of reassess where our canopy is. We might be a lot less than 500 right now. So he's got to get all that data entered into our GIS system. We might be closer to 400, 350 trees. And I know a lot of communities are just picking away at it. Other communities, like River Falls, they're just kind of biting the bullet, and they're putting it in their CIP. Like, all right, we're just going to take them all out, and they put $200,000 in their CIP and take them out, and then they can start their reforestation programs sooner than if we're just trying to kind of nickel and dime it. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So that's shade tree. So if we go to the next page. Not much change there in sidewalks and crosswalks. Snow removal, that's ice and snow removal, that is primarily just wages in that account. Our stop and go lights, there are a couple of reductions of $1,000 on electric utilities and service repair utilities. Go to the next page.
Before we do,
Yeah.
I see the overtime on there, and I see that there is an increase in there.
Yeah.
I just, thinking about the last winter and thinking about the storms that we've been experiencing, I know it's really just kind of taking a stab in the dark and hoping that you have enough, but I certainly want to make sure that you feel like you
Yeah.
have enough means to really take care of things.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, it is a stab in the dark. Obviously, no one can predict the future and the amount of overtime that we have coming forth, and it's just you make a best guess. And some years you're over, some years you're under, and other years you're right on. So it's based on historical trends. Obviously, this last couple of years have been really high, and so that's why you see a slight adjustment there. At one point in time, this was up in like the $60,000 to $80,000 range, and it's been reduced just because of to offset some of the increases that we're seeing in other line items. But I think this is a fair budget for overtime for
Okay.
certain. Yeah. Yep. Question?
No,
No, good.
Good, thank you.
Yep, stop and go, like I said, kind of the reductions there. Again, put in $500 additionally for travel and conferences. Our staff are going to some trainings on some of the latest greatest technologies and how to troubleshoot a lot of errors that happen for traffic signals. I tell you what, our staff, and not just in the stop and go lights, but just our staff in general, they're very knowledgeable in the departments that they're mainly focused in, and they save us a lot of money by not having to go out and hire consultants or electrical companies to come in and troubleshoot our systems. It saves the city a lot of money, so kudos to them. So that's why a $500 increase to travel and conferences is well worth it, in my opinion. Street lighting, there is an increase in utilities for electric, for the reason I stated before, just to keep up with the inflation that we're seeing in the utility company expenses. You go to the bottom of the page, Public Works street maintenance, other contractual services. That's I proposed a $10,000 increase to that line item, and that's in direct response to a lot of the discussion that we've had at both Public Works Committee, Public Safety Committee, and Council about the pavement markings throughout the community. We're to a point in the city where our internal staff, they used to be able to paint, roughly half the town in a given summer. Now they're down to about a quarter of the town is being able to stripe. And a lot of the times they're just focusing on crosswalks, stop bars, and parking stalls. They're not able to get out and do like a Carmichael Road or a Cooley Drive or a Crestview. And so we need some help in that area. And that's in response to the help that we need. So the extra $10,000, we would put together a $15,000 to $20,000 program each year where we, between Aaron and I, we would go out and drive and put together a plan. So maybe next year, we would do Cooley from, Cooley Road up to 11th Street. Maybe we'd hit, 2nd Street, so on and so forth. So that's why that has been increased. Just like I said, we're not able to keep up with the amount of striping that's out there, unfortunately. Next page, street maintenance, supplies and motor fuels, bump that up as well, just because of the rising costs of motor fuels, and like Sarah alluded to, the amount of emergencies that we've had, the number of plowings that we're seeing. Knock on wood, I hope that we have an average snowfall this year. That'd be fantastic to give the guys a little breather. It's been a long couple of winters for them. Ice control chemicals, that is another big increase that you see in the budget. So that's a $15,000 bump from 2023 to the 2024 budget. The price of salt went up, let's see, $7.49 a ton. And we get $1,650 tons of salt each year. So that equates to an additional $12,400 approximately.
Wow.
So and that's on the state contract. That's still that's what we typically do. We go through the state contract just because you get a better price, but even that goes up, exponentially over time. And so that's why you see that increase there in that line item, is just because of that's what the price of salt went up this year. So,
And looks like you added a few extra little tons in there too then.
yeah, and so we get 1,650 tons. We also are able to get 300 ton in reserve. It's there in case we need it. We also take out our beet heat and salt brine out of that account.
Okay.
And so that
Sure.
yep, that comes out of there as well. So those are other things that we take out of that ice control chemical line item. Moving down, the roadway supplies and signs, street signs and markings, increase that $3,000. That's for additional signage and paint. Signage that we're seeing a lot of the community members express their concerns over traffic and speed safety, just to be able to have some flexibility to go out and purchase some items as they arise. And then also, additional monies for some more traffic paint as well. As that is going up too, and the cost of the beads, the reflective beads that go down. Deb, do you know how much a pallet of that costs? Isn't it like $2,000 for a pallet of beads, 40 bags?
Gone up to, I
Yeah.
think it's like almost 3,000.
Yeah, so. And then moving along, West garage, no change there. And that's where we get to the bottom total. 8.9% increase from 23 to 24. That's including the wages. If you take it out, it's the 7.9% increase, or $53,700. So
Okay.
that's the summary. Now, if you have any questions, obviously I'm here to answer that. If you have any recommended changes, probably not the spot to make them. You're going to want to do that at either Finance Committee or Common Council.
So we're not going to take a vote tonight?
Correct.
Time for
correct.
discussion, though, so it's
Right.
good.
Yep.
Get into the detail.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you. I have a question for you about staffing and your employees, because I see that in certain categories you break out a salary for an individual. So how do you make that decision? Certainly some staff members probably help with painting, but they're also the snow,
Yeah.
on the snowplow in the winter, and,
Yep,
various
absolutely.
roles that they play. But there's certain areas where you have actually assigned a person
Correct.
their
Yep.
wage. So how's that
So
work?
when they're first hired, their job responsibilities are broken out across different accounts. And this goes back even to when Devin Willie kind of did.
Thomas Bell.
And so,
Back in the day?
for example, my salary, I'm broken out, 50% of it comes out of Parks Administration, 50% it comes out of Public Works Administration, okay? We have some employees, for example, like our lead Parks employee, 50% is General Parks, 13% is Lakefront Park, 11% is Grandview Park, 16% is Street Maintenance, and 10% is Snow and Ice Removal.
Okay.
So he's broken out across 5 different accounts to help pay for it. And it's based on, like Joyce said, the main responsibilities of that employee. All of our employees outside of our building maintenance staff have a certain percentage coming out of snow and ice removal, just because all of them do perform those duties. And so what happens is, when they fill out their time card, they have a drop-down menu of the tasks that they are typically involved in, and they select, let's just say it's the middle of January, we did snow plowing, so they select that task, snow and ice removal. That's where their salary is taken out of for that pay period.
Oh, okay.
Based on the amount of hours. Let's just say the week later they were out doing pothole patching, well, now it's street maintenance and so on and so forth, storm sewer work, or that type of thing.
So they code that themselves?
Yes, they code that
helps a
themselves
little
based
bit.
on the work that they've performed that week.
And then you mentioned you have employee designated as maintenance for this building?
Yes.
City Hall, and one at the municipal building for street, library, and police station?
Yes.
So that's all they do, pretty much?
Yep.
Is do the maintenance and upkeep of those buildings?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's how that's designated, so.
Yeah, it's very confusing. It's
a complicated system.
It is, and that's just, I don't know why they set it up that way, but that's the way
Well, we can see
I just
what
go
we're
with it.
spending on parks.
Yeah.
Gives a
There
clear,
used to be 11 different accounts just for parks,
Really?
Oh, really?
split out, but then we combined them all.
Yeah.
Actually, when Dean was in office,
Oh, was it?
yeah.
Pretty complicated.
Worked hard.
It's probably,
for it.
yeah, it's, like you said, it's just to get a more accurate account of where the time is being spent and, so on and so forth.
I think the parks it's in case you're audited, you have to have so much for Lakefront Park and
Sure.
things like that, so.
And how about the individual who's in the key or the lead person for the stormwater utilities? Is
Yep.
his salary, if reflected on this budget at all, or is it completely in the stormwater?
Let's see here.
Sorry, getting into the
Oh, that's
fine
fine, that's
points
fine.
here.
Yep. So 40% of his salary is public works street maintenance.
Okay,
15% is snow and ice, and then 45% is storm sewer.
Okay,
So
sure.
we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 employees where a portion of their salary is covered out by the storm sewer utility.
six
Six.
people have, oh, okay.
Because it looks like maybe the
Not-
street
not including-
sweeper.
Not including the part-time employees, which is
Right.
a street
Okay.
sweeper.
Does that include our staff engineering? Are they on that one?
Yep, city engineer, yep. City, oh, gosh, I should have printed this. My eyes are getting
Here,
old.
glasses.
Oh, darn.
Glasses.
Yes, exactly.
They're
Jeez, oh,
they're
Pete.
purple, but you can.
Our lead storm sewer, yep, our city inspector. our other city inspector who does our locating tickets. So we have an employee that goes out and does all of our sanitary locates, storm sewer locates, electrical locates. His portion of his is taken out of there. Another storm
Oh, that's
maintenance person.
complicated.
Yeah, and then another storm maintenance person. Yeah.
And of course, those are paid out of the utility.
Yes.
Which is on the people's monthly or quarterly bills.
Yes.
So it is, it's a pretty complicated arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see, it helps to see, well, where are we using our manpower? So when I ask you how many employees or how many staff, it is a complicated answer, isn't it?
It is, yes, it is.
But is it true that you haven't added any staff in the last couple of years?
No, it's been 3 years since we've had a staff person.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Outside of engineering.
Yeah.
Engineering's a whole different ballgame just because there's build back opportunities, right? And how we're able to support that department.
Right, because we added an engineering technician.
Correct.
About a year and a half ago.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep. So for a lot of the development work that we're doing, the private development work, so for Bella Rose development or St. Croix Meadows development at the old dog track, those are private developers. Instead of the city hiring consultants to come in and do the inspecting work, the city has staff on hand to do it. And then we're able to charge that developer his time, and then basically the developer pays for his wage.
Yeah, it helps
You know,
pay
And
our,
it's a good thing because
expenses.
we're able to, it's going to be our streets regardless, so we have eyes on it. And B, it's usually at a cheaper rate to the developer for them. Then it's cheaper for us to supply that inspector than it is to have an outside consultant come in and do that work. So it's kind of a win-win.
Well, I think that was a good review, Mike, as you said there. That's in a nutshell. That was not a nutshell. No, and so thanks for shining a light on the items here. I think, again, with inflation, I probably said it before, you fill up your car, get a cup of coffee, go to work, grab lunch, everything's inflated. So it's tough to say, why are taxes possibly going up? Why is this particular budget going up? Well, everything's going up. So I think you've done a really good job reining in costs and looking, like you said, we don't know what the future holds, but I'd rather have a conservative look at it and just be on the up and up of the ash trees, for example. We'd love to just say, it probably won't be so bad, but we know better. That's a big tragedy. So since Joy got to put you on the spot, I'll put you on the spot now. No, just kidding. But one thing that comes to mind as we go through that, and being on the park board, for example, for a number of years, just in that short period of time, and I don't know exact dates or when it falls on the budget, but we've been bringing in more parcels for parks, for example. You mentioned Bella Rose, which was a cornfield a couple of years ago. Those are more streets that require more salt and sand, more time, more painting, lines if there's lines, whatever. So, this budget has to expand a bit.
Yeah.
We've seen in the past, we've always hinted that in the past maybe the belt was too tight, and now we're paying the price to kind of play catch up. So, this seems very respectable and conservative of a budget. So.
thank you. Do you have any comments, Sarah?
I think I asked along the way, so I concur.
Okay, thanks.
I do concur with your suggestion or what you were questioning about the trees, and I know that you serve on the forestry committee here in town, because I've had residents come to me about their trees and why was mine not removed, and some of them are looking pretty tough. And of course, we had to remove trees this spring and this summer because of two big storm events that led to hazardous branches and so on, so certain trees were taken down. And I think it might be something interesting to explore and think going forward whether it would be worth doing some larger funding, like a CIP amount of money where we would bring in a contractor at that point, wouldn't we? And identify those trees in town that look, some of them are pretty unsightly. And dangerous, I'm sure, because if I'm not mistaken, what you shared with me before, Mike, was that you discovered as those trees that were damaged in April and again in July, a lot of them were unhealthy ash trees.
Right, yeah.
that.
I would say 80% of the trees that we've lost between the two storms have all been ash trees. And
Right.
it's just, it's due to EAB, in my opinion. I mean, it's just the branch structures are weaker and.
So the trees were on the list somewhere, maybe further down the list than what your
Yeah.
arborist, your specialist had planned, but yet the nature of the wind and the trees were weak. And it's something to think about because, maybe for safety's sake and, avoiding some of those emergencies, we spend a little bit more money now to speed that up so that we can redirect to get back to planting and replacing them with the plan that's been set out. So it's a thought, food for thought in the future.
And as you know, a lot of downtown area, there's some very mature trees, right? Where they're 36 to 40 dBH. I mean, we're talking large trees and in very tight places. And I don't want to put my staff in position where they're dropping that big of a tree and having it hit a car or a house or something. So it's come to a point now where, we'll still continue to pick apart and pick away at the smaller ones, but it'll just come a time where the only ones left will be the monsters, and that's where we need the help. Yeah.
So anyway, that's food for thought. Okay, so this is just a discussion item. If anyone has anything more to add tonight, or we'll move on. Thank you. Again, thanks for the depth and the answering the questions. Going line by line is helpful. Next item then is new business item D, discuss 2024 stormwater utility
Yeah,
budget.
this one will be a little easier. There's not much change here. The big one that I want to point out is on the first, second, third page. So our storm sewer, like Joy alluded to, it is a stormwater utility, is an enterprise fund where the city collects money on the quarterly utility bill. So on everybody's bill, there's the sanitary charge, a water charge, and then there's going to be a stormwater utility charge on there as well. And that money helps pay for staff, but it also helps pay for stormwater maintenance. It pays for stormwater outreach, education. It pays for publications, all things that the city is required to do under our MS4 permit. And so at the end of the year, I compile basically what we spent on several key areas, and I submit that to the state for them to review. So that's how the program is run and how it's funded. So for 2024, we're proposed to receive approximately $536,000 in stormwater utility funds. Okay. Like I said, a majority of that or not a majority of that, I would say approximately half goes towards, let's say 200 goes towards wages. The remaining goes towards those other ancillary items. So, for example, you got administration, you have membership and subscriptions, supplies, education, travel and conferences, IT support. Not much change. I didn't really change much in this budget, to be honest with you. Maybe $500 here, $1,000 here. In collection system maintenance, I upped the concrete up $1,000 to make up for that concrete that we lost in the public works operating budget. Upped crushed rock, reduced bituminous mixes just because. Yep.
Is that the other operating supplies? Is that what the concrete is, where it went from 4,000 to 8,000? Or where's the concrete one?
So the concrete one is one,
crushed.
2, 3,
I see that
4.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other operating supplies, that was increased just because both in 2023 and 2022, and I'd have to look
Ooh.
back at the details, but we
Yeah.
were spending a lot more than obviously what we
Yeah.
had been budgeted for. So it's
I
like, all
see
right.
that, yeah.
Yep. Lift stations, nothing has changed there. Street sweeping, I did increase the supplies and motor fuels for our street sweeping operations just because I'm trying to get the sweeper out and about more often during the summer months so we're not falling behind for the fall. So if you look at the last page, based on the 2023 budget to the 2024 budget, it's a 1.2% increase or $1,862. So pretty much right in line. The one big ticket item that we always discuss is on, I should have covered this one. I kind of flew over it. Oh, where's our big capital outlay one, Deb?
So I was looking.
Oh, there it is. Okay, it's on the first, second, third page at the top of the list.
Page 21 and 23.
Yeah.
Okay.
So collection systems, our 2023 budget was 200K, and our 2024 proposed budget is $180,000. And though that is the account that we primarily pull from to do our storm pond maintenance out of. So when I come to council and ask for, monies to help, for example, the one on Grandview Drive is actually just got seeded and matted, so it looks really, really nice now. But obviously, we're gonna try to tackle, 2 to 3 ponds each year, probably for the next 20 years. A lot of them need help. And so that's where we pull that money from.
And so looking at this, it looks like not as much got accomplished in 2023 as you had initially intended.
Correct. Yep. Exactly. We were dealing with storms. And
Storms.
so, yep. And the one on Grandview Drive, that pond, it lingered on longer than I would like to have. And I wanted, before I opened up and started another facility, I just wanted to kind of get that one done and off the list.
Okay.
So that's why not as much.
And am I right, you had to contract out for some of that work there? It was
Yeah.
such a big
Yeah.
job.
We're probably around $175,000 total right now.
Okay,
That's tree removal, that's dredging, that's,
just on that one pond?
just on that one pond. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a large pond.
It is big.
It was a big pond. It was a big undertaking, obviously. That's why maintenance of these facilities, mowing them, every year and keeping them in good shape is a benefit to the city, because if you let them go, we're talking a lot of dollars. And I actually just met with a consultant firm, WSB, who they spoke at one of our Rain and Rivers conferences about pond maintenance. They have a program, it's called a swamp program, and basically where they come into your community and they assess your entire stormwater pond maintenance program and system, and it's a very good program where they kind of look at the watershed, goes to this pond, and based on the current condition, they give it a score. And I'm actually going to have them come to probably next month's meeting to let you all hear a demonstration on it, just because I think moving forward that might be it'd be my recommendation to have something like that in place, because right now what's happening is we're kind of just shooting from the hip, where I get a phone call about my pond is bad, it's like, okay, we only have a limited amount of dollars, where can we get the best bang for our buck or the best benefit for the community? And so they'll rate all these ponds, and basically they'll list them A to Z. This is the worst pond. This is where the money should be going right now, and then so on and so forth. So when community members call in, we can say, "Oh, you're in pond 62. Yeah, you're kind of halfway down the list. It's probably going to be several years before we get to it." So on and so forth. Instead of me just saying, "Yeah, it's bad. We should probably do something." And I'm more trying to appease. Obviously, the one on Grandview Drive was in poor condition, and water was backing up into people's properties and jeopardizing some of their homes, and so something needs to be done there soon, and that's why that one was selected. But anyways, that's for a future meeting.
A pacer rating for
Ponds. It is.
There you
It's
go.
crazy. It is amazing. Like I said, I sat down to the tutorial last week, and it's very scientific, and the software updates itself, so you're not having to go out and re-inspect it, and they'll come out and they'll shoot points throughout the pond, and they'll tell you what the depth should be, how much material you should take out based on the drainage, coming into it, and you don't have to go all the way down to the bottom. You might be able to go halfway down and extend the life of this pond for 40 years. So instead of spending $100,000, you can get by with spending $50,000 and take the other. It's very, very.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That'd be good.
Is that a state agency or a private?
It's a private firm.
WSB,
Yep,
you said?
WSB. And there's probably, he brought up, there's about 20 to 30 communities over in the Twin City Metro that are utilizing the software already.
That's great.
Yeah. So anyways, that's the stormwater budget. Obviously pretty straightforward, not very many changes to it at all, so. That's all I got.
Thank you, that's an
Yeah.
important area. Appreciate that. Okay, let's see, our next item for old business, we are going to have an update on the Public Works facility. I know that recently the engineering, we have an arrangement with the Cedar Corporation.
Yep.
Architectural and design engineering firm, and they have looked at some different properties in town. So do you want to give us an update on
Yep,
what
so
they're saying?
I met with Cedar Corp a couple of weeks ago. They had put together kind of some preliminary plans based on some properties located throughout the community, and they're continuing to look at options going forward. But we've kind of settled on a locations, and we are going to finalize those locations later this month and actually put some numbers to them, which will be brought forward in front of Public Works Committee the first meeting in October for you to review and make comments on. So luckily, based on the space needs assessment, we were approximately around 40,000 square feet in building size. They were able to fit multiple buildings on multiple sites to get near that square footage. So obviously not ideal that they're continuing to be spread out. We're shooting for all under one building, but we're kind of playing with the cards that were dealt. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So next month I will have a more thorough update. Cedar Corp will be at the meetings for you to answer any questions.
They're going to be
Yep,
coming?
Yep,
Okay.
and there'll be some numbers.
And you're not allowed to tell us what lots or where they're looking right now? You
No.
prefer not to?
It's city-owned property.
Okay.
Yeah, it's city-owned property.
Sure.
Current sites that the city does own.
Rebuilding on the current sites that we
Yeah.
have, yeah.
Mike,
So-
if I can just ask then, if we're going to have Cedar Corp, could the pond people maybe come the next month? Because that
That's a
might
good
be a
idea.
lot to accomplish in one meeting.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Sure, because the pond work won't be done till next year. Sure, I think we're interested in the Public Works facility moving forward. I certainly still support the idea of finding a centralized location, so it would be disappointing to me if it's still in, sort of one side of town, but I know there's only so much property available, and hopefully there's still options moving forward, because it's been 10 months now since the council committed to doing that project, so we certainly want to keep doing the work that needs to be done. Any comment? Do you have a comment, Mike? Question
No,
about it?
no.
Okay.
Thank you.
As we've discussed before, that has been approved but not bonded for yet
Right.
by the council because we don't know actual numbers and costs. So, okay, thank you for that, and look forward to hearing from Cedar Corp, and we can chat with them directly. Project updates is next item, 3rd Street Hill reconstruction. How's that going, Erin?
Yeah, it's going well. We did the final wear course paving last Friday, so technically it is paved. We are waiting for a few finalizations, like we have to install some crash cushions on the barrier wall, so that's a safety thing. We gonna do the striping, that will be done this week. And then it's just kind of seeing how the turf established and maybe going back and forth. But other than that, the project is, pretty much closed up for the majority of the work. We then, I guess I'll just go to the Laurel Avenue / City Hall / Lakefront Park Trail project. So that one, we did get the trail repaved behind the band shell, so that's done.
Looks
So
nice.
that's, again, just turf establishment, any repairs that we might need to make on the new pavement. And then they reclaimed Laurel Avenue from Blakeman to 11th today. So now that is kind of looking like gravel. Everyone has access to their properties.
Just for the public, is that closed to through traffic? Is that local
Yes,
traffic?
we're gonna close, yes, it's closed to through traffic, so just open to local residents only. So as far as, since the projects, the 3rd Street Hill, that's just finished up, and the new project that's just starting, we do have the detour where we're not going to open up traffic yet on the 3rd Street Hill, so I know people are anxious, but there's really no point in opening it if they get to the top of the hill and it's closed.
Yeah.
Right.
So so right now you see a lot of different signage, construction signage going on. That's just from the 2 separate projects. So we'll get that cleaned up. The one contract will take away their detour signage, and then it'll just be the other contract. So hopefully the detour isn't confusing, but, so we'll keep it closed even though it will be finished up here until both projects are complete, then we'll just fully open it up.
Do you have a sense on when both might be complete? And I know
Yeah,
it's moving
We
target.
are still working, yeah, it is a little bit of a moving target. We haven't gotten a revised schedule from the contractor. We are working with him to get that, but, October, technically our contract says the substantial completion is October 6th. So there is a lot of work to be done. I can see that moving a little bit. But that is the goal, is to have it done by the, middle of October. So he plans, though, verbal confirmation, he'll probably be starting on the city hall property parking lot next week. So that will be closed down for, well, that gets finished, shouldn't have a huge impact, you know, we'll have just mostly staff and other people have to park in other locations, for a short duration. So I think that's it for that one. And then the downtown APS, so I know last time I kind of brought a proposal to approve, you know, working with an electrician and getting some, you know, quote directly for the equipment. Unfortunately, I waited and waited and waited to get.
You were gonna bring it to finance once you.
Yeah,
got
I
the
was
quote,
gonna
yeah.
bring it to finance, so, you know, everyone approved it here. Unfortunately, the electrical company said basically they don't feel comfortable giving us a quote, I think it's because they're very busy and just didn't have the time to put something together. So unfortunately I waited like 6 weeks and then they told me they weren't interested. So now I am gonna reach out to just a separate electrician. They sound like they're interested in putting a quote together, so hopefully we can get a number. If it's still within kind of what you guys approved, then I think I still will just take it directly to finance. If, you know, if that's not the plan, then I'll just have to bring something else to you guys, so. So unfortunately, a little bit more delayed than I was hoping, but, you know, just kind of got to go with what we get, so.
So based on the time, I mean, that work isn't something that would be done.
I would not expect the work to be done this year.
Yeah, it'd be a spring.
It can't be done this year?
No,
Okay.
it would just,
That's
it would be
disappointing.
really hard. Yeah, and I don't even know, I haven't heard from TAPCO, like, there could be some lead times on, like, the poles we want to get and things like that. They
Right.
didn't tell us what the lead times were for, like, the equipment alone. So, yeah, I definitely would not expect it to be done this year.
Do you think it makes sense, just given that you have one other potential opportunity for an electrician? Does it make sense to do an RFP as well? So maybe reach out to that person and see if there happens to be anybody else? I know you had really wanted to work
Right.
with the same.
Yeah, I think there's only a select few that really work in town.
Okay.
I guess I could ask around. So the second one is one that we do work with a lot. So I don't know. I guess we
Yeah.
could talk about it to see if it would be worth it. The only thing with that, we would have to then spend more money on a design. So right now I don't have like official plan sheets, let's say. It's kind of a design build a little bit.
Okay.
You know, and so if we went that route, we would have to put more like traffic signal plans together.
Okay.
So
To do an
it would
RFP,
probably
okay.
balance out.
Sure, okay.
Where this was more, you know, here's what we want to do, but they kind of have to come up with the additional equipment they would need. If we did an RFP, we would need exact quantities for all the electrical items and all that, and
Okay.
that's not my specialty, so.
Okay.
Okay.
I think when we talked about that last, was this particular electrician the one that gave you a verbal?
Yes,
Okay, so I
yes.
threw out a ballpark.
Yep,
So if we talk to person number 2 and they're in the ballpark, I mean, at least that gives us some comfort that.
right.
And then, like you say, if it's
Yeah.
way out of bounds, then we're gonna have to take a
Yeah,
step
we
or two
got-
back.
Yeah.
Right, we have a certain amount that we were hoping to designate the ARPA funds to.
Yes.
And it is an important project, so
Yep.
I was hoping we could get it done this fall, but
Yeah.
it's the challenge, people are busy.
Yes.
And you're right, when they don't get back to you and give you a bid,
Yeah.
they're like overloaded, I guess, I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
why they don't respond, but.
And we do have plenty of time to still spend the ARPA funds, so I'm
Right,
not
yes.
nervous about
It's designated,
that
right. Next year,
running out. Yep.
okay.
And then the last one, I did want to bring it up. There's no like action items. There are a few federal/state grant opportunities. They are due like October 27th, so I didn't have much time to, you know, since we only have a meeting every month, I thought this would be the best time to provide an update. So I've been looking at them. So the first one is the Transportation Alternatives Program, which we call TAP. And this focuses on pedestrian and bicycle facilities. So based on, I have also been doing research on how they actually score the projects for the grants. And so the TAP program, I did get like the scoring rubric that I went through. And based on that and what we have in our pedestrian and bicycle plan, The trail section that stands out is the Hanley Road between Hagen and Nabokate.
Namakawa.
Namakawa. Dang it, I know I was gonna mess that up.
That's okay.
So we do have a gap. We basically have a trail on Hagen and we have a trail on another part of Hanley, so it's a big gap. I think it'd have a lot of like utilitarian, travel, basically, people actually like needing to get somewhere versus just recreational use. So I think with the neighborhood that it's in and the location with the trail gap, it should score pretty good. So we would have a good chance hopefully on getting that. And so that we would make an off-street trail on that section. So the second one would be the STP local. So this is Surface Transportation Program for local roads only. So WISDOT has a mapping tool that identifies which roads are even eligible.
So
it's
not arterial, yeah,
yeah,
not
it's
arterial, not
basically the
collectors.
lower volume neighborhood roads. So that's what would be a local road.
So
That,
Ninth Street doesn't qualify.
correct, it does.
How about Green Street?
Well,
Yeah.
that's what we already tried for that.
Tried for that one, it got
That
rejected.
was the one
That
we
was the
applied.
program we, yeah.
Okay, sorry. That's right, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
On our list, though.
We tried.
This one, there is no specific scoring criteria. It's kind of up to the committees that score it, and ones that sound like have scored high, you know, anything with safety, very bad road condition,
Around schools.
or, you know, yeah, fire departments, or
Fillmore?
economic, you know, vitality, access, basically. So the one actually from kind of the roads that I'm aware of that have been brought to our attention from council that aren't in our CIP. So these would be projects that would need like 2027 to 2029 construction. So there wasn't really anything in our current CIP for like 2026 or 2027 that really fit, because none of them were actually 100% local. So the one I am thinking would do well is Oak Street / Chestnut, maybe Fillmore. It's a combination, but basically something behind the high school along the bus route.
Yeah.
So it's access to the school. It is in poor roadway condition. So I would include some sort of sidewalk on the project. So that's what I'm thinking for that one. And then the.
Sorry, was
yeah,
that
any
state or
questions?
federal? I mean, where was that grant? through?
It's federal money.
Okay.
But it's kind of like the state administers it.
Okay.
Yeah. STP local, STP
Yeah, so
urban.
that's STP local. So then STP urban is, again, federal money, state administered, but for the higher speed arterial collector. So it has to be a collector higher. So this, you know,
Ninth?
I don't think that one would score as high.
Okay.
It doesn't have the volumes as some of the other ones. Yeah, I have a map, so like comparison, you know, a section of Stage Line has 16,000 cars on an average. 9th Street has 800.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So it sounds like, again, there was no specific scoring criteria to go off of. It's kind of up to the committees. Safety would be a big one. Higher traveled corridors, I think, would score better. And so I'm thinking maybe a portion of Carmichael. Stage Line Road, I think, would be a good one where we have, you know, the two different or a few different subdivisions that don't have a connection. You see a lot of people walking on Stage Line. So Stage Line and Carmichael are kind of on the top of my list, and I was gonna do a little bit more research, I think, on what the limits of the project would be. But that, I think, as far as, you know, Stage Line has 5,000 cars. So that is, you know, pretty good as far as average daily traffic. And that would have a safety component. So those are the ones that I think would score better and have a better chance of winning.
Thank
So-
you.
Yeah.
So these, you're considering putting together, or you're working towards
Yes.
putting those, and you have about 6 weeks?
Yes.
5 to 6 weeks.
Yep.
So are you looking for any input on your selections, or are you just going to go with your professional, you know,
I think
what you think will fit the
Yeah.
application process the best.
I am just gonna go with what we think will score the best.
I know Carmichael's been talked about a lot.
Yes, so it'll just be which stretch and what exactly would the improvements be, if we wanted to do more than just like resurface the pavement.
Sure.
Which is what we have, we do have that in our CIP right now, to resurface
Sure.
a portion of it.
South
Sure.
of I-94.
Yep, south of I-94.
So, okay,
so-
versus, so when you were saying 5,000 cars, do you split that up? How many are north of 94 and how
Oh,
many?
well, no, we have two separate numbers.
Yes.
I don't have on my sheet.
Yeah, that's okay.
There would be a different number for going
Sure,
south. So
when you
that was
get it.
just north.
I see,
Yep.
certainly, right. Okay, well, thank you, those are important
Yeah.
and we're hopeful. So thanks for
Yes.
putting your time and energy into that. Any else, other comments? Anyone about those grant applications? Any other communications or items for future agenda? Anything from you? Okay. To have a motion
To
for
adjourn?
I'll second that.
motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for a good meeting.